Delhi, 2 in the morning. This isn't just the hour of silence, it's the hour of cleansing, a moment when the city's darkest shadows stretch and the most audacious crimes seek refuge. In Connaught Place, under the dim streetlights, a tandoor restaurant with its blazing iron oven transformed from a place that served bread into a gruesome sacrificial altar. Behind its dull wooden door, the distinct aroma of Indian spices had been permanently contaminated by an unforgivable scent, burnt flesh, hot oil, and the hidden testimony of death. When the first police team entered that small kitchen, they were greeted by a searing heat, not from a late working chef, but from the poisonous warmth of an oven fired up long after closing. Inside the iron structure designed for cooking food, they found deformed remains they would soon identify as a life violently and barbarically stolen. The question struck like a sledgehammer blow amidst the horror. Who could be so cruel as to use a cooking appliance as a tool for cremation, and why? This wasn't just a murder, it was a message of extreme cruelty, a desperate act to erase someone's existence from the face of the earth. The victim soon had a name, Naina Sahni, a name that immediately shot to the media headlines, not for her achievements, but for the brutality of her death. She was a symbol of Delhi's contradictions, a modern, ambitious woman, yet vulnerable to violence in her private life. On the other side, Sushil Sharma, a man whose political connections and social status should have guaranteed him immunity, was now at the center of the storm. The case quickly became more than just a crime. It was a scandal of power, of a betrayal paid for in blood, and a futile attempt to erase the evidence with fire. That night, a toxic relationship turned into the coldest of horror scenarios. A tragedy involving jealousy, rage, and a split-second decision that led to an unimaginable crime. The investigation moved into the forensic realm. The team worked amidst the charred dust and vaporized oil, searching for clues that survived the flames. The first autopsy, conducted under massive public pressure, revealed two conflicting stories. There was a clear gunshot wound to the head, a quick solution if murder was the sole objective, suggesting an instant death. But what stunned the experts was other evidence: the presence of soot particles and carbon residue trapped deep within the victim's respiratory system. It was the undeniable sign that Naina Sahni was still breathing when the tandoor oven was lit, that she had smelled and inhaled the very smoke meant to be her end. The core enigma emerged, splitting the investigators' beliefs. Was the bullet fired to incapacitate her, followed by the burning as a deliberate act of desecration and cleanup? Or was there a significant time gap between a non-fatal shot and the savage act of incineration? The forensic conclusion that the victim suffered thermal trauma while still alive transformed the case from a common murder into an act of premeditated cruelty, a fact that would haunt the courtroom. This contradiction, the gunshot wound and the evidence of being burned alive, became the dark heart of the entire case, a forensic statement that screamed of unimaginable cruelty and a profound malicious intent to destroy all traces. The demand for a second autopsy came naturally, driven by a wave of skepticism and calls for accountability. Media pressure required a re-verification of every fracture and every speck of soot. This more meticulous process confirmed the gunshot wound and established the bullet's trajectory, suggesting a close-range struggle, not a planned execution from a distance. Re-evaluating the head injury became crucial. Was it definitively fatal, or was it possible the victim had only been rendered unconscious? This ambiguous forensic answer opened the door for provocative interpretations. Meanwhile, DNA experts faced a monumental challenge: extracting genetic material from tissue that had undergone extreme thermal degradation in an oven reaching hundreds of degrees. They had to filter relevant DNA from a chaos of charred molecules. Their success confirmed Naina's identity, closing the door on any defense claims, doubting who was in the oven, but it didn't explain how she ended up there. Her identity was revealed, but the motive remained shrouded in smoke. Ballistics analysis presented what seemed to be the clearest evidence, yet it was still questionable. The metal projectile recovered from the victim's skull was tested and matched to a firearm seized from the suspect's circle. The microscopic scratch marks on the bullet, the weapon's fingerprint, were a perfect match. This physical evidence created a strong bridge between the suspect and the deadly act. But the defense lawyers were ready. They didn't attack the match itself, they attacked the scenario. Could the weapon have been used by someone else? Could the bullet have been fired in self defense? Ballistics identified the weapon, but it was psychology that had to fill the void of criminal intent, and that became the battleground in court. They challenged the chain of custody, proposed hypotheses of contamination from the dirty kitchen environment, and tried to weaken every link connecting Sushil Sharma to the act. Even the smallest details, like the type of oil used in the oven, were examined to see if they could have accelerated the burning and covered up evidence. In the courtroom, the fight became a battle between scientific certainty and the art of planting doubt. Sushil Sharma's lawyers didn't doubt forensic science, they doubted its practitioners and protocols. They questioned the oven's temperature at the time of the fire, the potential for cross-contamination of samples at a messy crime scene, and the validity of DNA techniques on material that was almost charcoal. They forced every forensic expert to prove flawlessly that their evidence was undeniable truth, not mere interpretation. They even presented a counter expert who questioned whether the soot in the lungs could have come from the restaurant's smoky environment. Every doubt, every procedural loophole was magnified and blown into the courtroom, forcing the judge and jury to grapple with scientific certainty versus fallible human possibility. It was a cold legal game, where emotion had to bow to the rules of evidence. Outside the courtroom, the media frenzy reached its peak, creating a drama larger than the trial itself. The case was served to the public with a sauce of betrayal, obsession, and extreme domestic violence. Every neighbor, former colleague, and even street gossip was turned into character testimony. This narrative filled the motivational void that forensics couldn't. Jealousy over a flirtatious phone call, arguments about money, and political betrayal. The public wasn't just fed the fact that she died, but why she had to die, amidst a burning jealousy and a shattered ego. The media created two characters, Naina as the sainted victim betrayed and Sushil as the cold monster. This characterization, while provocative, often obscured the complexities of a personal relationship that ended in tragedy. But the most valuable testimony came from the silent electronic witness, the CCTV systems around Connaught Place. Footage that initially seemed trivial became an inescapable timeline. The recordings showed interactions, hurried steps down a hallway, a strangely parked car, and the chef who was suddenly ordered to go home, a suspicious command that isolated the scene. When the technical forensic data, DNA, ballistics, soot, was synchronized with the CCTV timeline, the framework of Sushil Sharma's actions was revealed, from the argument in the hotel room to the desperate attempt to erase the victim's existence in the oven. The footage dismantled the defense's narrative of an accident. Slowly, all the pieces came together, not into a beautiful puzzle but into a mosaic of darkness. The fact that the victim was not only shot but also burned alive became an inescapable claim in the eyes of the law, proof of a malicious intent that went beyond ordinary murder. The defense tried to argue that the burning was a panicked reaction, not a plan. But the soot in Naina's lungs spoke louder than any sophisticated legal defense, locking the perpetrator's motivation into one of deliberate savagery. It was psychological proof etched at a cellular level. The perpetrator wanted to utterly annihilate the victim, not just kill her. Finally, the verdict was delivered. The court acknowledged the forensic truth combined with the chronological testimony. The verdict closed the criminal case but also opened a moral debate on the death penalty and violence committed under the cloak of intimacy. Had justice been served, or had the system merely provided a fleeting satisfaction to a bloodthirsty mob? The case became a grim beacon, illuminating broader issues in India about the role of women, power, and the extent to which the law can reach crimes born in the domestic sphere. The verdict was not just the end of a case, it was the beginning of a painful social discussion about victim protection and systemic bias. Today, that oven is just cold metal. The restaurant is a haunted place, closed and forgotten by the city's busy traffic. The Naina Sahni case became an eternal case study in India's forensic archives. A warning about how far science can speak for the voiceless and the limits where science stops and humanity must take over. Forensic science tells us what happened with numbers, data, and microscopes, but it fails to measure the depth of desperation that would lead a man to use a tandoor oven as a tomb for his secrets. The impact of this case extends beyond verdicts and prisons. It forced every citizen of Delhi to reflect on the darkness that can hide behind the facade of a perfect relationship. Activists used the case as a call to reform domestic violence laws, emphasizing that danger can come from the person you are supposed to trust the most. In forensic medicine lecture halls, Naina Sahni's case is taught as a classic example of post-mortem artifacts versus ante-mortem injury. The crucial difference between a wound inflicted after death and one that indicates life during torture. And as night once again blankets Delhi, the shadow of Naina Sahni still drifts between the smoke and spices, a painful reminder that the fires ignited by passion and revenge will always leave an eternal carbon trace, no matter how hard one tries to blow them away. That is the most disturbing forensic puzzle, knowing the facts of the burning, but never truly understanding the reason behind the soul-searing cruelty. And the greatest horror remains in the unanswered question from that dark corridor. Did she inhale smoke at the end of her life, alone in the darkness of that hot tandoor, realizing that the person she loved was her executioner? That is the burden of this story, which will continue to haunt Delhi's collective memory. We have the scientific truth, but the emotional truth remains buried in the ashes. The story of Naina Sahni is a tragic reminder of the darkness that can hide in plain sight. What do you think is the most horrifying part of this case? The forensic evidence of soot in her lungs, or the burning motive of jealousy? Write your thoughts in the comment section below. If you are interested in other dark case files we plan to open from the archives, don't forget to subscribe to Underworld Archive 9 and turn on the notification bell. Thank you for watching.